The cold vacuum of space stretched infinitely beyond the viewport of the Nexari command vessel, Vyrak's claw. Stars shimmered like distant watchful eyes against the black canvas. Indifferent to the turmoil unfolding within the ship's hull, Commander Nex'Kel stood rigid beside the observation window, his multi-limbed silhouette framed by pale blue emergency lights. His eyes, dark and reflective, traced the stars as if seeking answers in the void. A faint hum thrummed through the metal corridors, a mechanical heartbeat amid sterile silence. The scent of recycled air mixed with the sharp tang of ionized coolant, a reminder of the cold efficiency that governed Nexari technology. The ship's interior was angular and austere, illuminated by dim, bluish panels that cast long shadows across the smooth surfaces. The atmosphere was tense, suffused with a quiet dread that no amount of protocol could mask. Nex'Kel's mind replayed the mission's grim sequence once more. The intelligence had been clear: a human child, no older than 10 cycles, had been captured during a skirmish on a fringe world. That child, a creature from a species the Nexari had long dismissed as primitive, was supposed to be a bargaining chip, a trivial pawn in a vast interstellar game. Yet, from the moment they'd taken her aboard, something had shifted. An unspoken gravity settled over the crew, derailing expectations and unraveling certainty. The vessel lurched suddenly, and the soft alarms pulsed in rhythm with the ship's vibrations. Nex'Kel's 6 limbs tensed reflexively, a primal echo beneath his disciplined exterior. Quinlex, the ship's chief scientist, appeared beside him, her multi-faced eyes wide with concern. The scent of her pheromones, a subtle blend of stress and urgency, filled the space between them. "She's waking," Quinlex said, voice steady despite the tremor in her antenna. "The child. Physiological signs are unprecedented. Neural activity is accelerating." Nex'Kel nodded, though unease coiled tight in his chest. The child, Sarah Webb, was more than an anomaly, she was a catalyst. The Nexari Empire, vast and unyielding, had never encountered humanity on this scale. Their previous contact had been brief and transactional, a single life saved decades ago, a debt neither species fully understood. Now, as the child stirred, that tenuous balance threatened to collapse. Deeper into the ship, the sterile white light of the medical bay flickered against the polished walls. The sterile scent was punctuated by the faint chemical sharpness of antiseptics and the metallic tang of medical instruments. Sarah lay on the biobed, her chest rising and falling in rapid, uneven breaths. Electrodes and monitors surrounded her, their screens flashing streams of data in a language Nex'Kel struggled to decipher fully. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises sharp and piercing despite the wariness etched across her young face. Sam Torres, a human soldier assigned to monitor the child, stood nearby. His uniform, a stark contrast to the Nexari's sleek armor, was scuffed and stained from recent combat. He exuded a quiet determination, his jaw set as he observed Sarah, with a mixture of protectiveness and trepidation. The sterile environment seemed to shrink around him, the weight of his unseen mission pressing down like gravity. Outside the bay, the bridge buzzed with tension. Crew members moved with practiced urgency, their segmented limbs and sensor arrays attuned to every alert. The Nexari Empire was a titan of conquest, but today, even their colossal confidence faltered. Reports had poured in from across sectors, systems once loyal now flickering with rebellion, fleets mysteriously lost to the void, communication blackouts scattering like ghost signals. Nex'Kel's mind raced through possibilities, theories rooted in strategy and data. Yet none accounted for the singular variable, now aboard Vyrak's claw, the human child, whose presence defied every expectation. Memories surfaced of the ancient pact, the fleeting moment when humanity's fleeting reach met the Nexari's overwhelming force, and a life was spared. A debt written in silence, now whispered across the stars. The ambient hum deepened as the ship altered course, engines flaring with a low roar that vibrated through the hull. Outside, the stars streaked past, transforming into blurs of light as Vyrak's claw accelerated toward the outer rim. Nex'Kel's gaze remained locked on Sarah, the child who held in her fragile form the seeds of an empire's undoing. His thoughts flickered to Quinlex's earlier words, unprecedented neural activity. What lay beneath that rapid pulse of life? Or a spark of something far more profound? The corridors beyond the bridge echoed with footsteps and soft mechanical clicks, a symphony of life and machine intertwined. Amidst it all, the child's breathing steadied, her small hand twitching faintly beneath the sterile sheets. The Nexari commander's mind drifted back to the moments of capture. A blur of chaotic combat, flashes of energy, and the sudden, disorienting calm when they secured Sarah. Her defiance had been immediate, a fierce light burning behind her eyes despite her youth. That light had not dimmed. If anything, it had grown, radiating a quiet power that unsettled even the most battle-hardened soldiers. From a hidden alcove, Quinlex watched Sarah with a mixture of scientific curiosity and growing apprehension. Her antennae trembled slightly, signals of unresolved conflict within her own mind. The child's presence challenged the Nexari's understanding of biology and warfare, threatening to upend centuries of dominance. The ship's intercom crackled faintly before a calm, measured voice issued commands, overlaying the tension with cold authority. Nex'Kel absorbed every syllable, calculating responses even as doubt crept in. The Empire's networks faltered, whispers of rebellion grew louder. The political structures that had governed for millennia were now fragile tapestries unraveling at the edges. In the medical bay, Sam Torres leaned closer to Sarah, his voice barely above a whisper. Not words of comfort, but strategies, promises, histories, fragments of a human world now light, years away. His fingers brushed a stray lock of hair from her forehead, and in that simple gesture lay a century's worth of unspoken bonds. The child stirred again, eyes meeting Sam's with a clarity that cut through the sterile haze. Outside, the Vyrak's claw shuddered as a sudden tremor rippled through the ship. Warning lights flashed crimson and gold, casting erratic shadows on the walls. Nex'Kel's limbs moved with precision, issuing orders that filtered through the ship's speakers, like thunder rolling across a battlefield. The enemy was closer than anyone had anticipated. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. Holo maps shimmered with the positions of hostile fleets converging rapidly. Sensors detected anomalies, unexplained disruptions in Nexari technology, systems faltering without cause. The implication was clear: the Empire was under threat from within and without, a death spiral accelerated by a single, captured child. Nex'Kel's eyes darted to Quinlex, who nodded grimly. The scientist's team was analyzing the child's biological data, racing against time to decode the sudden surge of energy signatures emanating from Sarah's nervous system. It was unlike anything cataloged in Nexari archives, a raw, unpredictable force that defied containment. In that moment, the commander understood the truth that bound their fates. The Empire's fall was no grand military campaign, no devastating siege. It was the quiet power of a child, human, resilient, and unknowable, that shattered their foundations. The hum of the ship's engines deepened into a steady roar as Vyrak's claw engaged its jump drive, plunging into the next hyperspace corridor. Stars stretched into brilliant streaks, the boundaries of reality blurring as time itself seemed to warp. Nex'Kel braced against the acceleration, heart pounding with equal parts dread and determination. Behind him, the child's breathing had settled into a steady rhythm, her small chest rising and falling like the fragile cadence of hope. Somewhere in the depths of the galaxy, the debt once owed was awakening, a silent promise that even empires could not ignore. Outside the viewport, the stars returned, steady and cold. But inside the ship, a storm was rising. and the Nexari Empire would never be the same. The sterile hum of the Nexari containment chamber was a constant drone in Nex'Kel's ears, a monotonous reminder of the fragile balance between control and chaos. The chamber itself was a transparent polycrystalline sphere, suspended midair by invisible fields that shimmered faintly under the lab's cool, bluish lights. This room, nestled in the heart of their flagship vessel, was the nexus where their greatest mystery had been confined for 48 hours. A single human child, captured during the initial skirmishes against the encroaching human fleet. Nex'Kel paced slowly around the sphere, each step measured and deliberate. His multiple limbs moved with an eerie grace, the sharp claws clicking softly against the polished floor. The scent of antiseptic and ionized metal clung to the air, mingling with the faint, almost imperceptible odor of the human's presence. It was a scent unfamiliar and unsettling. The child, small, vulnerable, was unlike any creature the Nexari had studied before. The soft whimpers emanating from within the sphere pulled at something deep within Nex'Kel's consciousness. His compound eyes narrowed, focusing on the delicate figure curled up inside. Despite the harsh environment, the child seemed untouched by fear or pain, as if protected by some unseen shield. This resilience was perplexing. Human biology, as far as the Nexari knew, was fragile, prone to infections, vulnerable to rapid cellular breakdown in foreign atmospheres. Yet here she was, breathing steadily, her skin unblemished after hours of exposure to Nexari containment protocols designed to neutralize alien pathogens. The sphere's interior atmosphere was a synthetic mix calibrated for Nexari physiology, toxic to most terrestrial life forms. But the human child, Sarah Webb, as they had learned from intercepted transmissions, defied expectations. Nex'Kel's mind raced. The data logs showed repeated attempts by their scanning instruments to penetrate the child's epidermis, to analyze her cellular structure, yet all efforts were met with resistance. The surface of her skin absorbed energy but did not yield, as if it were woven from an unbreakable fabric. Other specimens, aliens from neighboring systems, were quickly classified, their weaknesses exploited. But this human child was an enigma wrapped in flesh. He paused, recalling the events that had led them here. The initial satellite images, the rapid deployment of their ground forces, the sudden ambush where the child was snatched from her unit. The human soldiers had fought valiantly to reclaim her, but the Nexari's superior technology prevailed, until now. The human's stubborn resilience had been noted, but this tiny captive now embodied something deeper, a secret they had yet to uncover. Suddenly, the sphere's surface flickered as Quinlex, the Nexari scientist, entered the chamber. The scientist's multiple eyes blinked rapidly as he approached, his limbs laden with instruments designed for probing and analysis. Quinlex's presence was a relief. His expertise was their best hope for unraveling the mystery before them. Without a word, Quinlex began his examination. The chamber's ambient lights shifted from blue to a soft green, sensors extending like tendrils toward the sphere. Projected holograms flickered, displaying intricate scans of the child's skin, muscles, and underlying tissues. Nex'Kel observed intently, every nuance recorded in his mind. The readings defied all known biological models. The child's flesh exhibited a complex lattice of nanoscopic fibers interwoven with organic cells, a hybrid structure unknown in the galaxy. The fibers absorbed kinetic energy, dispersing it harmlessly throughout the body. Even the most powerful energy pulses from their scanners bounced off her skin, leaving no trace of damage. Quinlex's voice resonated softly, tinged with awe. Her tissue, it's unbreakable, not just physically resilient, but adaptive. It responds to external stimuli by reinforcing itself. Nex'Kel's heart thrummed with a mixture of fear and fascination. The implications were staggering. If this child's biology was a weapon disguised as flesh, their entire military advantage was at risk. The chamber's atmosphere suddenly shifted as an alarm blared, a warning signal from the ship's command deck. The Nexari fleet was under attack. The humans had launched a coordinated strike. Capitalizing on the moment of vulnerability, Nex'Kel's attention snapped back to the present. He gestured sharply, and the containment sphere's fields intensified, a shimmering barrier rippling across its surface. The child stirred, her eyes opening to reveal a steely determination that belied her years. It was as if the unbreakable flesh housed an unyielding spirit, a force that no technology could suppress. Nex'Kel's mind raced. They must extract every secret before it was too late. Suddenly, the chamber's walls reverberated with the impact of enemy fire. The Nexari vessel shuddered violently, lights flickering as the ship's hull groaned under the assault. The unrelenting barrage was unlike anything Nex'Kel had encountered. Precision strikes that bypassed shields, targeting critical systems with surgical efficiency. Quinlex's scanners began to falter, sensors twitching erratically. "Commander," he warned, "we must secure the specimen or risk catastrophic loss." Nex'Kel nodded grimly. He activated a containment protocol, initiating a rapid lockdown sequence. The sphere's field intensified into a blinding glow, encasing the child in a cocoon of energy that shimmered like liquid glass. The chamber's walls sealed, isolating the internal atmosphere from the rest of the ship. As the Nexari scrambled to stabilize the vessel, Nex'Kel remained rooted beside the sphere, his mind grappling with a growing realization. This child was not merely a captive, she was a living weapon, a fortress of resilience engineered by millennia of human evolution or, perhaps, something far more profound. The ship lurched again, throwing Nex'Kel off balance. Through the observation window, he glimpsed the chaos unfolding beyond. The human fleet advancing with relentless determination. Their sleek vessels, darting through space with uncanny precision. The battlefield was shifting, and the Nexari Empire's dominance was slipping through their claws, like stardust. Nex'Kel's internal systems recorded every detail. The vibrations in the hull, the rising temperature from damaged reactors, the faint electrical hum of failing circuits. Yet, amid the turmoil, the child remained serene, an island of calm amidst a sea of violence. He pressed his clawed hand against the sphere, feeling a subtle pulse emanate from within. It was rhythmic and steady, a heartbeat that defied the odds. The first revelation had dawned: the human child's flesh was unbreakable, a living testament to a strength the Nexari had underestimated. It was a strength that would soon unravel their empire, shatter their pride, and rewrite the destiny of the stars. As the ship's systems began to fail, Nex'Kel closed his eyes briefly, a silent vow forming in his mind. They had captured the human child, but in doing so, they had unleashed a force beyond comprehension. The Nexari Empire would fall in 72 hours. The command bridge of the Nexari flagship, Velthar, was a cathedral of cold, angular light, humming with the ceaseless pulse of alien machinery. Panes of translucent crystal shimmered faintly, reflecting the stars that sprawled endlessly beyond the viewport. Nex'Kel stood silently before the central console, his multifaceted eyes absorbing the flickering streams of data cascading down the holoscreens. Each symbol, each waveform, seemed to mock him with its inscrutability. The faint tang of ionized air mixed with the metallic scent of the ship's hull, a constant reminder of their fragile existence in the void. The battle had ended. Or rather, it had been decisively curtailed, not by overwhelming firepower, but by a sudden, inexplicable shift that none aboard the Velthar could comprehend. The humans had executed their final strike with a precision and adaptability that shattered the Nexari offensive in less than 3 days. The empire that had once stretched across countless star systems teetered on the precipice of extinction. And it was all centered on a single human child they had once captured decades ago. Nex'Kel's mind churned with fragments of information, looping endlessly like a fracturing signal. Quinn Lex's reports were clear, but unnerving. The human child, Sarah Webb, had not only survived the harshest Nexari conditioning, but had demonstrated an adaptive capability that bordered on the supernormal. It was as if her mind evolved to counter every Nexari strategy in real time, absorbing knowledge, anticipating moves, and rewriting tactics with blinding speed. Through the panoramic viewport, the nebulae beyond the Velthar stretched in silent, cosmic swirls. Violet tendrils against obsidian depths, punctuated by the distant twinkle of newborn stars. For all its vastness, the universe felt suddenly claustrophobic, the breath of inevitability tightening around Nex'Kel's chest. He recalled the earliest moments of their encounter with her. How the child, barely 5 cycles old, had been plucked from a ruined world, eyes wide with fear and wonder. The Nexari had expected a frightened, fragile creature, one to be molded and subdued. Instead, Sarah had defied every protocol, breaking chains of thought and expectation with a resilience that unsettled even the most stoic soldiers. Nex'Kel's gaze shifted to the holoscreen, revealing the latest operational map. Red blips, representing human forces, darted erratically, their movements unpredictable, yet devastatingly effective. The humans no longer fought as a singular hive mind, but exhibited a polymorphic chaos, each soldier adapting to the battlefield dynamically. Contrary to the rigid Nexari doctrines, it was as though the child's mind had injected a new algorithm into their combat neural networks, a living code rewriting the war itself. The raw hum of the ship's engines resonated through the deck plates. Nex'Kel could almost hear the heartbeat of the Velthar, steady but faltering beneath the weight of defeat. His own thoughts, once sharp and decisive, now betrayed a growing uncertainty. The adaptive mind of the humans was unlike anything the Nexari had encountered. A living, breathing force that recalibrated itself to every threat, every contingency. He closed his eyes briefly, willing his own instincts to settle the turmoil within. The memories surged, Sarah's luminous gaze, the flicker of defiance as she faced them years ago, the echoes of her laughter, so human, so achingly fragile and yet infused with unyielding strength. It was that strength that had unspooled the Empire's dominance. Below deck, the corridors of the Velthar were a symphony of controlled chaos. Soldiers and engineers moved with tense purpose, the air thick with the metallic scent of coolant and the faint tang of burnt circuitry. Nex'Kel's footsteps echoed softly against the walls as he traversed toward the strategic chamber, where Quinn Lex awaited. The scientist's laboratory was a stark contrast to the rest of the ship. Filled with bio-synthetic pods, arrays of neural scanners, and an array of alien flora specimens that seemed out of place amid the machinery. Quinn Lex was hunched over a console, eyes gleaming with an unsettling mixture of fascination and dread. As Nex'Kel entered, the scientist did not look up, fingers dancing across the interface with practiced precision. The child. Quinn Lex began without preamble, voice low and urgent. Her neural pathways evolve at an accelerated rate. It is not merely adaptation. It is active reconfiguration. She rewrites her own cognition in response to stimuli, effectively predicting and counteracting our moves before we execute them. Nex'Kel absorbed the words like cold water, the implication sinking deep into his marrow. This was no simple enemy. This was a new paradigm of intelligence. Fluid, relentless, and terrifyingly effective. A sudden siren blared, shattering the tenuous quiet. The ship juddered violently, metal groaning beneath sudden impact. Outside, the ominous rumble of energy discharges echoed through the hull. Nex'Kel's senses sharpened. The human forces were not just adaptive. They were aggressive, launching coordinated strikes that exploited every weakness. He moved to the tactical viewport, as it flickered to life with a skeletal view of the battlefield. Human vessels darted through the ether like swarming predators, their attack vectors shifting in real time. The Nexari defenses faltered under this relentless pressure, unable to predict or preempt the onslaught. The sickly glow of plasma fire illuminated the darkness, punctuated by the sharp crackle of shields failing. Sparks rained like stardust as sections of the hull buckled. The ship's internal alarms sounded a mournful chorus, a dirge for an empire slipping through their grasp. Nex'Kel's mind raced. He tried to impose order on the chaos, deploy countermeasures, recalibrate the shielding, coordinate tactical retreats. But each maneuver was met with an unforeseen human response. It was as if Sarah's influence permeated every human action, a ghostly hand guiding their every decision. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and burning metal, mingling with the acrid tang of fear. Nex'Kel's breath came in measured gulps as he fought to maintain composure. His multifaceted eyes tracked the shifting tides of battle, noting the subtle patterns emerging within the apparent randomness. The humans were no longer disorganized, they were evolving, a collective mind honed by Sarah's adaptive genius. Minutes stretched into an eternity as the Velthar shuddered under relentless assault. Nex'Kel felt the weight of history pressing down, centuries of conquest unraveling in the span of a single day. The Empire's proud foundations crumbled beneath the tide of a child's indomitable will. Suddenly, the strategic map pulsed with an urgent alert. A breach in the main engineering bay. Nex'Kel's pulse quickened. Losing control of the engines would spell doom. He signaled to the nearest squadron, urgency lacing his commands. But even as reinforcements mobilized, the breach widened. A flood of human soldiers surging through the corridors, their movements fluid and lethal. The faint clatter of boots mingled with the sharp reports of energy weapons. The air was thick with the scent of ionized plasma and scorched metal. Nex'Kel's gaze darted to the nearest viewport, just in time to see a human soldier leap across the chamber, firing with unerring accuracy. The soldier's eyes burned with fierce determination, every movement a testament to survival honed through relentless adaptation. The corridors became a maze of shadows and flashes, the clash of technology and resolve echoing through the ship's bones. Nex'Kel fought alongside his soldiers, his alien limbs moving with disciplined precision. Yet each advance was met with an unpredictable counter, each victory snatched away by an immediate human adjustment. As the battle surged, Nex'Kel's mind returned to Sarah, the child-turned commander who had become the axis upon which this war pivoted. He remembered her quiet moments in captivity, the subtle defiance etched in her gaze, the whispered words she once spoke, a language of hope and resilience foreign to the Nexari tongue. That hope now seemed a weapon, sharper and deadlier than any plasma cannon. It was a living force, a mental contagion that spread through the human ranks, transforming weakness into strength. The Velthar convulsed violently as another energy blast tore through its deflector shields. The once pristine corridors were now scarred with burn marks and debris, the air thick with smoke, and the metallic scent of ruptured conduits. Nex'Kel felt a surge of desperation as he surveyed the damage. The Empire's great vessel faltering under a child's unyielding spirit. Time seemed to slow, the cacophony of battle fading into a distant roar. In that suspended moment, Nex'Kel understood the truth. The war had never been about sheer force or technological supremacy. It had always been about adaptability, about the will to change, to evolve in the face of extinction. And the humans, with Sarah at their helm, had mastered this art. The final warning siren shrieked through the ship as critical systems failed one after another. Nex'Kel's voice was a low growl of acceptance, a recognition of the inevitable. The Nexari Empire, vast and unyielding, was collapsing not beneath the might of weapons, but under the relentless tide of an adaptive mind. A human child who had rewritten the rules of survival. As the Velthar listed toward the void, dark tendrils of nebula light bleeding through shattered viewports, Next, the Nexari war room was a cavern of shadow and flickering light, the walls alive with the restless dance of holographic projections. Maps of star systems, strategic grids, and blinking dots representing their scattered fleets pulsed with quiet menace. Nex'Kel stood at the center, his multifaceted eyes scanning the reports that streamed in from every corner of their empire. Each message bore the same grim refrain: collapse was accelerating, systems were falling, and the relentless human advance showed no sign of pause. The air was thick, a blend of recycled oxygen, and the faint metallic tang of overheating machinery. Nex'Kel's mandibles twitched with tension. His skin, usually a dull iridescent green, seemed pale in the cold light. The Nexari pride was wounded. No, shattered. The empire that had spanned decades, built on calculated strategy and overwhelming force, was crumbling beneath the weight of a single human child's capture and the furious retaliation that followed. Around him, officers whispered, their voices barely audible over the hum of the machinery. Quinlex, the lead scientist, approached cautiously, his slender form almost hesitant. "Commander," he began, his voice a mixture of awe and fear, "the humans continue to defy all our predictions. Their response, swift, brutal, and unrelenting. We believed our technology and tactics would hold. But their spirit, it is unlike anything recorded." Nex'Kel turned sharply, his gaze boring into Quinlex. "Spirit. They are but a primitive species. Flesh and bone, no different from the countless others we have subdued." Yet even as the words left his mandibles, doubt crept beneath his certainty. The memory of the child, small, fierce, unyielding, haunted his thoughts. How that fragile human had sparked a firestorm that consumed entire fleets and shattered their command. Outside the war room's reinforced viewport, the landscape of the fallen capital sprawled beneath a bruised sky. Smoke curled from shattered spires, and the distant rumble of collapsing structures matched the rhythm of Nex'Kel's heartbeat. The cacophony of war was no longer confined to distant stars. It had become the Empire's suffocating breath. Nex'Kel turned away, pacing with a restless energy. His thoughts spiraled back to the moment they had first captured the child. It had seemed a simple mission, retrieval of a human specimen for study and leverage. Instead, it ignited a force that tore through their ranks with a ferocity unexpected. That child had been a spark in a powder keg, and humanity had poured gasoline onto the flames. A sudden flicker on the holo screen drew his attention. Sensor readings showed a massive human fleet approaching at hypervelocity, their formation tight, purposeful. Just raw, unadulterated determination. Nex'Kel's compound senses flared, a cold dread settling behind his eyes. The humans were coming for the final blow. "Prepare defenses," he commanded, voice steel beneath the rising storm of panic. "We will not fall without a fight." Yet, even as the orders were relayed, Nex'Kel felt the weight of inevitability pressing down. There was something more than technology in the humans' advance. A relentless will that no weapon could pierce, no tactic could outmaneuver. It was the unyielding spirit of a species that refused to yield to extinction. In the dim corridors, soldiers scrambled to their stations, the clatter of armor and weapons mingling with the low vibrations of charging energy shields. Nex'Kel watched as his troops moved with disciplined urgency, but he knew discipline alone would not turn the tide. The humans fought with a raw, unpredictable energy, driven by something primal and profound. Images flickered through his mind. Sarah Webb, the human commander, standing resolute amidst the chaos, her eyes blazing with fierce resolve. Sam Torres, the soldier whose laughter had echoed even in the darkest battles, a flame of hope for those around him. These were not just enemies. They were symbols of a spirit that refused to break. Outside, the first salvo of the human fleet erupted in a violent symphony of light and sound. Pulses of plasma tore through the Nexari defenses, the shockwaves rattling the very foundation of their stronghold. The scent of burning circuits and scorched metal filled the air, mingling with the acrid smoke of destroyed drones. Nex'Kel felt the shudder beneath his feet as explosions rippled through the compound. He gritted his teeth, forcing his focus against the tide of despair. The Nexari Empire was a fortress, forged through centuries of conquest and survival. Yet here now, it was crumbling. Not just from the assault, but from the revelation that their greatest enemy was not an external force, but the indomitable will of a single species. Quinlex appeared once more, his eyes wide with a mixture of scientific fascination and terror. "Commander, their tactics, they are unlike any we have encountered. Adaptive, unpredictable. They learn and evolve faster than our simulations predicted." Nex'Kel nodded grimly. "Their spirit is their weapon. We have underestimated it, and it will be our undoing." The battle raged on, a brutal ballad of destruction and survival. Nex'Kel found himself thrust into the heart of the chaos, coordinating defenses, issuing commands, and watching as his forces were pushed back inch by inch. The humans advanced with relentless precision, their will unbroken by the devastation they faced. Amidst the smoky haze, Nex'Kel's mind drifted back to the child, the catalyst of this war. That small, defiant figure had embodied the essence of humanity's unyielding spirit. It was a spirit that refused to bow, to break, to surrender. It was a force that transcended technology, strategy, and power. As the hours bled into the night, the Nexari command center trembled under the weight of incoming strikes. Screens flickered, alarms blared, and the once imposing fortress felt like a house of cards threatening collapse. Yet even in the face of annihilation, Nex'Kel felt a grudging respect growing within him. The humans did not fight for conquest or glory. They fought for survival, for honor, for a debt repaid, and a future reclaimed. Their unyielding spirit was a beacon, a force that had shattered an empire and rewritten the fate of stars. In the final moments before the compound's core breached, Nex'Kel stood alone, surrounded by the echoes of a fallen empire. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and burning metal. The distant roar of collapsing structures a grim symphony. He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of history and the bitter taste of defeat. Yet beneath it all, a spark of understanding flickered, a revelation that transcended loss. The Nexari had faced many enemies, but never one like this. A spirit unyielding, unbreakable, and eternal. As the walls gave way and the light faded, Nex'Kel's final thought was not of defeat, but of awe. They had captured a human child, and in doing so, unleashed a force that no empire could contain. The Nexari Empire fell in 72 hours, but humanity's unyielding spirit was just beginning to rise. The war-torn plains of Veshkar Prime were draped in a twilight so thick it seemed to swallow light whole. The once vibrant purple grass, now scorched and trampled, crunched beneath the boots of the human battalion as they advanced steadily toward the heart of the Nexari Empire's capital. The air hung heavy with the acrid scent of burnt ozone and the metallic tang of spilled blood, a grim perfume that clawed at every breath. Somewhere in the distance, a low rumble vibrated through the ground, the ominous signature of the Nexari dreadnoughts stirring from their slumber, yet still too late to stem the tide. Sarah Webb's gaze was unflinching as she led her squad through the jagged ruins of what had once been the Grand Central Plaza. The towering spires of Nexari architecture, curving in sweeping arcs of obsidian and crystal, were shattered, like broken bones protruding from the carcass of a fallen titan. The fractured skyline flickered with intermittent explosions, the aftershocks of the relentless human bombardment echoing through the fractured cityscape. Smoke twisted upward, a toxic column blotting the purple sky, and somewhere behind that veil, the command center waited, the keystone of the Nexari resistance. Each step Sarah took was measured, deliberate. Years of training had honed her instincts to razor sharpness, but beneath the calm exterior, a storm of emotions churned. She thought of the child, the innocent human infant, the Nexari once captured decades ago, a life they saved without asking for anything in return. That memory had ignited a promise within humanity: they would repay that debt with their blood and steel. Now, as the culmination of that vow drew near, Sarah could feel the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. Ahead, the jagged silhouette of the citadel loomed, a colossal fortress of interwoven metal and crystalline structures, pulsating faintly with an eerie blue light. The Nexari's last bastion, their seat of power, and the place where Commander Nex'Kel awaited. Sarah's earpiece crackled softly. Sam Torres's voice was steady but edged with urgency. Enemy drones inbound, multiple vectors bearing down. Were exposed. Sarah nodded, even though no one could see her. Her senses sharpened, detecting the faint hum of energy weapons charging nearby. From the ruins, sleek Nexari scouts emerged, their multi-limbed forms glinting with iridescent armor plates. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Plasma bolts arced through the air like deadly streaks of liquid fire, illuminating the smoke and dust in vivid flashes. The sharp crackle of energy shields, flaring under fire, was punctuated by the guttural war cries of the Nexari warriors. Sarah pivoted, signaling her squad to take cover behind a fractured wall of crystalline debris. The ground trembled as a massive Nexari war machine, an enormous quadrupedal walker bristling with cannons, strode into view. Its servos hissed with hydraulic pressure, and its missile pods opened like gaping maws, spitting a hailstorm of explosive ordnance toward the human lines. The humans responded with a synchronized roar of counterfire. Sarah raised her pulse rifle, fingers steady on the trigger, as she fired into the exposed joints of the walker's legs. The searing heat of the plasma rounds melted through the Nexari's armor, sending sparks and molten fragments through the air. The towering machine faltered, stammered, and then collapsed in a thunderous crash, the ground reverberating beneath its weight. But there was no time to celebrate. The Nexari forces regrouped swiftly, their movements fluid and precise, a testament to the centuries of martial discipline honed by their species. Sarah's thoughts flickered briefly to Quinlex, the Nexari scientist who had once tended to the human child, defying his own species' policies in an act of compassion. The irony was not lost on her. It was that single act of mercy that had forged the bond leading to this moment. Humanity would now exact its reckoning. The squad pressed forward, weaving through the maze of shattered columns and fallen statues. Smoke and dust choked the air, and the taste of ash coated Sarah's tongue. The staccato rhythm of gunfire and explosions was punctuated by the deep, reverberating thrum of the Nexari's planetary defense systems skewing into overdrive. The sky above was a chaotic canvas of tracer rounds and glowing missiles, each explosion casting fleeting shadows across the devastated landscape. As they neared the citadel's main entrance, the ground beneath them quaked violently. The colossal doors groaned, ancient mechanisms struggling to respond. Nex'Kel's voice crackled over the comm channels, cold and unyielding. "You trespass on sacred ground, human. Surrender, and we will show mercy." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice was steady as she responded inwardly. There would be no mercy for the Empire that had once sought to control a helpless child. Her squad formed a tight perimeter as the doors finally creaked open, revealing a darkened corridor pulsing with blue energy. The air inside was cooler, tinged with the faint hum of power coursing through the citadel's veins. They moved cautiously, the shadows seeming to writhe as if alive. The walls glistened with bio-organic circuits, a fusion of technology and living tissue that was distinctly Nexari. Sarah could almost feel the intelligence embedded in the very structure, a silent sentinel watching their every move. The corridor narrowed, funneling them toward the central chamber, where Nex'Kel awaited. As they entered the vast hall, the lighting shifted suddenly. A brilliant azure light flooded the space, revealing the towering figure of Nex'Kel standing atop an elevated dais. His 4 eyes gleamed with a mixture of anger and something deeper, perhaps regret. Behind him, a massive holographic map of the galaxy flickered, red dots marking the territories now lost to humanity's advance. Sarah's gaze hardened. She noted the subtle twitch in Nex'Kel's mandibles, a sign of suppressed fury. The Nexari commander's armor was scarred but intact, his posture unbowed despite the devastation surrounding him. The tension in the chamber was suffocating. The only sound was the low hum of the energy field that surrounded the dais. Without hesitation, Sarah stepped forward, every muscle coiled like a spring. Her mind raced through the scenarios she had rehearsed countless times, but none could capture the raw intensity of this moment. The culmination of decades of conflict, sacrifice, and unyielding resolve boiled to a crescendo here. Suddenly, Nex'Kel moved with surprising speed, drawing a blade forged from crystallized energy. It shimmered with lethal brilliance as he lunged forward. Sarah barely had time to react, raising her rifle and firing point blank. The blast sizzled against the blade, sending sparks cascading through the chamber. They clashed, weapon against blade, the sound a sharp, ringing counterpoint to the tense silence. The dance was frenetic and brutal. Sarah's training kept her focused, but she could feel the raw power behind Nex'Kel's strikes. Each blow was a test of endurance, a challenge of wills. Around them, the holographic map flickered and sparked, the energy field pulsing erratically with their movements. In a swift maneuver, Sarah feinted left and then rolled beneath Nex'Kel's next strike. She discharged a carefully aimed shot at the joints of his armor, and sparks erupted from the strike. The Nexari commander staggered, but his eyes burned with renewed fury. He roared, a guttural, primal sound that echoed off the chamber walls, and surged forward with even greater ferocity. Sarah's breaths came in sharp gasps, sweat dripping down her brow despite the cool air. Time seemed to slow, every moment stretching into an eternity as she parried and countered. Her mind recalled the stories whispered among human soldiers. The legend of the human child who had changed the course of history. The debt humanity was here to repay. With a sudden burst of strength, Sarah disarmed Nex'Kel, sending the energy blade skittering across the floor. She raised her rifle, the muzzle glowing with charged plasma. Nex'Kel looked up at her, his multiple eyes reflecting a complex mix of defeat and respect. The tension in his posture softened, the anger giving way to a somber acceptance. In that charged silence, Sarah lowered her weapon slightly. She felt the weight of what this moment represented. The end of an empire and the dawn of a new chapter. The Nexari had once saved a single human child. Now humanity had come full circle. It was not vengeance she sought but justice, the fulfillment of a promise made across the gulf of space and time. The chamber fell quiet, the holographic map dimming as Nex'Kel slowly knelt, a gesture both of surrender and acknowledgement. Sarah's squad entered behind her, weapons trained but restrained, the battle finally reaching its resolution. Outside, the first light of dawn began to pierce the smoke-choked skies, the purple grass bathed in a fragile glow of hope. Sarah's thoughts drifted briefly to Sam Torres and the others who had fought so valiantly to reach this point. The cost had been immense, but the debt was repaid. As the Nexari Empire's reign crumbled in the shadow of a single human child's memory, humanity stood not as conquerors, but as heirs to a legacy of compassion and unyielding resolve. The quiet hum of the Citadel's systems faded, replaced by the steady, reassuring rhythm of peace at last. The acrid stench of burning metal and scorched earth hung heavy in the air, a grim veil over the shattered remains of what was once the heart of the Nexari Empire. Jagged silhouettes of twisted spires jutted against the bruised twilight sky. their blackened forms silhouetted like the ribs of a fallen beast. Smoke curled upward in thick, choking plumes, blotting out the stars, as if the heavens themselves recoiled from the devastation below. Amidst the ruin and ruin alone stood Sarah Webb, her boots sinking into the ash-laden soil, her breath ragged but steady. The hum of distant engines, the crackle of sporadic blaster fire, and the muffled cries of the wounded echoed faintly, remnants of a battle already decided. Yet, in this silence between storms, her mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, an endless stream of questions and memories that refused to quiet. She lowered her gaze to the ground, eyes tracing the jagged scorch marks where the last vestiges of Nexari resistance had been crushed. The soil was still warm beneath her feet, infused with the heat of conflict and the bitter taste of loss. Dust motes danced lazily in the fading light, settling over the broken hulls of war machines and the scattered remnants of alien armor. Somewhere beneath that debris lay the dreams and ambitions of an empire, now extinguished. Sarah's fingers brushed against the worn grip of her rifle, its cold metal an anchor to the present. The weapon was heavier than she remembered, weighted not by its physical mass, but by the burden it now symbolized, the debt humanity owed, the promise forged in blood and sacrifice. That promise had carried them across the stars, carried them into this forsaken place, and now carried them forward into an uncertain future. Her thoughts drifted back to the moment it had all begun. Decades ago, on a distant world where fate had intertwined the destinies of two species. The Nexari had saved a child, a solitary human infant abandoned and vulnerable. No demands had been made, no bargain struck. Only kindness, a spark of hope in a universe marred by indifference. And now, that spark had ignited a fire that would reshape the galaxy. The distant rumble of engines grew louder, and Sarah turned to see Sam Torres approaching. His face smeared with grime and sweat, eyes bright with an intensity that mirrored her own. There was an unspoken understanding between them, forged in the crucible of shared hardship. Sam's presence was a reminder that they were not alone, that humanity's strength lay not just in technology or strategy, but in the unyielding bonds of comradeship. Together, they advanced through the smoldering wreckage, the ground crunching beneath their boots as they navigated the labyrinth of devastation. The sky above had deepened into an indigo cloak, flecked with the distant glimmers of stars struggling to pierce the thick haze. The air was heavy with the metallic tang of blood, the acrid bite of burned circuitry, and the faint, haunting scent of alien flora scorched beyond recognition. As they moved deeper into the ruined city, the echoes of the past whispered through the shadows. Ancient statues, once proud monuments to Nexari glory, now lay fragmented and broken, their gleaming surfaces marred by time and conflict. They seemed to gaze mournfully upon the ruin of their civilization. The weight of history pressed down upon Sarah's shoulders, a solemn reminder of the vastness of what had been lost. She stopped abruptly, her gaze caught by a glimmer of movement beneath a fallen archway. Kneeling down, she brushed away the ash to reveal a small, crumpled form. A Nexari child, no older than the one they had saved decades ago. The child's wide, luminous eyes regarded her with a mixture of fear and curiosity, uncomprehending but alive. Sarah's heart clenched, the familiar ache of protective instinct stirring deep within her. Carefully, she reached out, the scars of battle momentarily forgotten, as she cradled the fragile being in her arms. The child's skin was cool and soft, its rhythmic breathing a fragile thread connecting it to life. The moment felt suspended in time, a fragile beacon of hope amid the ruins. Sarah understood then that the cycle was unbroken, that the gift of salvation must continue. Behind her, Sam approached silently, his gaze steady as he surveyed the scene. Together, they rose, carrying the child toward the waiting transport. The engines of their ship hummed a steady cadence, a heartbeat against the dying world. As the ramp lowered and they stepped aboard, the heavy doors sealed behind them, isolating them from the devastation outside. Inside the cabin, the sterile hum of the ship's systems contrasted starkly with the chaos they had left behind. The air was crisp, tinged with the faint scent of recycled oxygen and the sharp tang of technological precision. Sarah laid the child gently upon a cushioned cot, watching as the little body stirred, eyes fluttering open to meet hers once more. The child's gaze held a profound innocence, yet beneath it lay an ancient resilience, a testament to the indomitable will that had carried humanity through the darkest of times. Sarah's mind raced with plans and possibilities. This child was more than a survivor. It was a symbol, a living bridge between two worlds, a promise that the future could be rewritten. Outside, the ship's sensors blinked rapidly, scanning the horizon for any signs of residual threats. The once mighty Nexari Empire was no more, its fleets shattered, its cities reduced to ash. Yet, in this moment of victory, there was no jubilation, only a solemn recognition of the cost. Lives lost, civilizations ended, futures forever altered. Sarah's thoughts turned inward, reflecting on the path that had led them here. The alliances forged in desperation, the sacrifices made without hesitation. The quiet heroism of countless individuals whose names might never be known. The child in her care was the heir to that legacy, a living testament to the kindness and courage that bound disparate species in a shared destiny. The ship's engines roared to life, vibrations humming through the floor as they lifted off from the smoldering ruins. Through the viewport, the devastated world receded, shrinking into a distant orb cloaked in shadow. Stars twinkled beyond, ancient and indifferent, yet somehow more hopeful now. Sarah stood at the helm, the child's soft breathing a steady rhythm beneath her watchful eye. The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before them, a canvas upon which new stories would be written, new alliances forged, and new dreams pursued. The debt humanity owed had been repaid not with vengeance or conquest, but with compassion, honor, and an unwavering commitment to protect. As the ship surged forward, cutting through the void with purpose and resolve, Sarah felt a quiet surge of determination. The galaxy was vast, fraught with dangers and mysteries yet to be unraveled. But as long as that small, fragile life remained safe, there was hope. Hope that the darkness could be pierced, that the scars of the past could heal, and that from the ashes of empire, a brighter future could rise. The child stirred again, reaching out with a tentative hand, and Sarah smiled, a small, wary smile, but genuine. In that simple gesture lay the promise of renewal, the affirmation that even in the face of overwhelming loss, life endured. The stars beckoned, distant and eternal, a reminder that beyond the shadows of destruction lay the infinite possibilities of tomorrow. Together, human and alien, past and future intertwined, they would navigate the uncharted paths ahead. For they were bound by a debt unspoken, a promise unbroken, and a hope unwavering. In the quiet hum of the ship's engines, Sarah found strength. The Nexari Empire had fallen, but its story was not yet finished. Through the child she carried, through the choices they would make, a new chapter was beginning. One defined not by conquest or dominion, but by unity, compassion, and the enduring power of life. As the stars streamed past in ribbons of light, Sarah Webb held the future close, a guardian of legacy and hope. The debt was remembered, the future was forged. And in that moment, beneath the vast expanse of the cosmos, humanity's journey continued, unbroken, unyielding, and alive.